everybody, it's Gina from Orchid and Opal, and today I have another tutorial for you. I'm going to show you how to make what I'm calling this double bicone bracelet, and this is a design that I came up with recently, and I really liked how it came together. I had several different colors of Czech glass bicones in about a 6mm size that I hadn't used before, and I always like to, try new things with new shapes and all the new beads that I'm getting in these subscription boxes. It's just a lot of fun to try something new. And whenever possible, I really like to try to come up with an original design. I love creating new things, and while I do love making things that are from other people's designs, and I love surfing Pinterest and seeing all the beautiful creations, sometimes it's fun to try to come up with something brand new. So that's what I did with this double bicone bracelet. So you see that one that I was playing with, and then I also made this one that I'm wearing, and that's the periwinkle bicone beads that came in the April 2018 dollar bead box, and then these blue ones they had come in I think maybe the February dollar bead box. If not, I purchased them from dollarbeadbox.com. So you'll see that in both of these bracelets that I made, I went with two different colors of Czech glass bicones. But for this bracelet that I'm going to make on this tutorial, I'm just going to be using one color, just because that's what I have. I have used up most of my cobalt blue, and I used up all of my periwinkle color in a different type of bracelet that I made this week. So because this is what I have, and because we have to be flexible, we are going to be making this bracelet with one color bicone. And I thought I'd do something a little different. Instead of using 4mm bicones and the crystal bicones in the inside, like I had here and like I have here on this other bracelet that I made, I decided I wanted to try doing some 4mm fire polish beads. And that's just because it's what I have a lot of. I had gotten quite a few strands from dollarbeadbox.com, and I really liked how these went with the turquoise with travertine finish, I believe they were. The turquoise have kind of a brownish, little speckled look on them, makes them look kind of more natural, like natural stone. And I wanted to find something that coordinated, and the crystal bicones that I had in my stash just didn't go as well as I feel like these beautiful 4mm fire polish will go with these. I really like how they look together. So use what you have. If you want to use crystal bicones of 4mm size, definitely go for it. That's what I used before. And I'm just going to try using 4mm Czech fire polish in this bracelet, and we'll see how it goes. Alright, well, let's get started. For this tutorial, you will need the following items. You will need 22 6mm Czech glass bicones. You will need 4mm crystal bicones or 4mm Czech fire polish beads, 36 of those. You'll need size 11 seed beads, a clasp of your choice, and 5 feet of fishing line. I'm using 8-pound transite or monofilament, and then you'll also need a couple of split or jump rings. Alright, to begin your bracelet, you might find it helpful to start laying out your materials. And the bracelets that I had made and that I will be making today are going to be coming out at about 7 inches. So you can see here that with the clasp, they're going to be just about 7 inches, maybe just a smidgen bigger. So if that's a good size for you, you can use that as a general guideline for the one you're creating. If you need something bigger, then definitely you'll need to add another link, or you'll want to plan to add more split or jump rings on the end or some kind of a chain in order to extend your bracelet. But if you want to go with the size I made, about a 7 inch, then we're going to need the materials that I had listed before. So we're going to need about 22 of these Czech glass 6mm bicones. And I'm going to go ahead and just kind of lay out my materials, and you may want to do this too. And that way we can keep up with them as we go along and see how much we have left. And I'm just going to double these bicones up like this that are going to create our little links on our bracelet. Let's slip a couple in here. And I'm just doing this roughly, and that will just help me stay on track with what I'm doing. Sometimes I like to lay out my materials like that. So I'll need 3 of these over here, and then 3 of the 4mm either bicones or fire polish, whatever you're using, in between each of those Czech bicones. So just start dropping some in there. And sometimes when you do this, it also gives you a good idea as to how the beads are going to look together. And if you have a bead board, you can use that instead to lay everything out. I'm just using a basic bead mat that I had gotten from dollarbeadbox.com, and it keeps everything from rolling around, especially when I'm trying to film and bead at the same time. That way I can prevent too much from getting knocked around. So, alright, I've laid out my beads, and you can feel free to do that too. And we're ready to start stringing. Okay, so you can go ahead and pick up your monofilament or your fishing line or your transite. And a tip that I had gotten from Alicia of Beautiful Nights, check her out if you haven't already. She has been on YouTube for quite some time, and she has a wealth of tutorials that are great. She's a great teacher. But a tip that I had received when watching one of her tutorials way back was that if you're using monofilament or fishing line or anything similar to that, run it through your fingers. You know, pinch your fingers tight on it and just run it through kind of quickly. And what that does is it heats it up a little bit and it stretches it out just a tiny bit, because monofilament has some stretch to it. But it also comes off the roll extremely curly. And so this just helps it kind of straighten out enough to make it just a little bit easier to work with. So that's what I'm doing right here. And sometimes I like to work with monofilament when I'm making bracelet projects, because I feel like it's a little bit sturdier than using some kind of beading thread or even fire line, especially if you don't have to pass through the beads too many times like this bracelet. So I just really like the firmness that it gives to certain projects. So that's why I'm using this today instead of Fireline, which I really love. Alright, so once you have that done, you can start stringing. We're going to be picking up 3 seed beads. And then we're going to be picking up I'm picking up 3 of the Czech fire polish, or if you have bicones, but I'm just going to be calling them fire polish beads. So if I say that, you'll know, pick up your bicone, your 4mm bicones. Alright, so you have 3 seed beads and 3 fire polish beads on your monofilament. And at this point, it's a great idea to add a split ring. If you're using split rings, jump rings will be easier to add at the end, but I'm going to be using a split ring on the end, so that's why I'm going ahead and adding that, because it's just going to prevent me from cracking a bead, hopefully, at the end of the bracelet. You know, I'm trying to prevent that. Sometimes split rings are a little bit more difficult to put on, so I'm just doing that to get that process out of the way. So a nice 8-inch tail or so, and make a knot carefully without getting your beads in the knot, which will then make this into a little loop. Okay guys, so your 3 fire polish beads are going to be on the end of your bracelet, and we're going to continue on with the seed beads on the right heading this way. And we knotted our monofilament one time, and we're just going to continue with this bracelet from this point. You'll have your tail that you're going to be weaving in later, and I wouldn't make more than 1 knot at this point with that first loop, because you want to be able to pass through your beads a couple of times, especially at that end. You know, and you don't want to have a big bulky knot right there. It's not the best place to make a knot to end your bracelet, especially if you do one that's, you know, kind of a couple of knots in one place, but also because it can be in the way when you're trying to pass through your beads again. So with your monofilament coming out from the top of these 3 seed beads here on the side, we're going to continue on with our pattern, and that means we're going to string on our next Czech Bicone 6mm. So string on one of those, and then string on 3 seed beads, and then string on one more Czech bicone, and pull them down. So you should have that. And then from here, take your end of your monofilament and pass back up those 3 seed beads, starting at the opposite end. And you may not be able to get through all 3 seed beads at one time, because working with monofilament's a little more difficult sometimes than working with a needle and thread, and sometimes you have to really play with the beads to get the monofilament to go through. But that's okay, just take your time. And pull that nice and tight. And so you should have a pattern that looks like this right now. And then coming out of those 3 seed beads at the top, again, you're going to go through the next 6mm bicone that you had just put on. Just like that, and then pull it nice and tight. And then go through the next 3 seed beads that you just put on with your monofilament. And it cooperated with me. Let me put that all the way through all 3 of them at once. And then give it a nice pull. Hold on to this section with your, I'm right-handed, so I'm just going to say with your left hand, and then with your right hand, give that a nice pull so that it feels snug. Okay, so string on your next 4mm beads, string on 3 of those, and then go through those same 3 seed beads that you just went through, that you're coming out of, but at the opposite end. Okay, so you just made another little loop with those 4mm fire polish beads, and then go through the next 2 fire polish beads, okay, So I'm going through the second one, and I'm just going to turn my work over so that my thread is coming up out of that fire polish bead on the end. I'm going to hold it with my left, and then with my right I'm going to pull the thread or the monofilament nice and tight. So you should have something that looks like this. Now, I'm going to set it down, and we're ready to string on our next beads. So we're going to string on one seed bead, one 6mm bicone, three seed beads, another 6mm bicone, and one more seed bead. Pull those down, and that's what you should have. And then go through that fire polish bead right on the end from the opposite direction. So go up through that and pull, just like that. And you should have a pattern that looks like this. And you're coming out of that 4mm Czech fire polish, go through the next seed bead and the next 6mm bicone, and then go through the next three seed beads, and I'm going to flip my work over because I just feel like it's a little easier when it's coming out from the top. And I'm just holding it in my left hand, and with my right hand I'm giving it a nice strong pull so that my work feels tight. Okay? So just like we did before, we're at the point where we're ready to string on our next 4mm beads, coming out of the three seed beads here. So I'm going to pick up three 4mm beads, pull them down, and then I'm going to go up through those three seed beads in the opposite direction that we're coming out of. And it let me do it again. Yay! I love it when it cooperates, especially on camera. That's even better. Okay, give that a good pull, and then you're going to go through the next 4mm and then the next 4mm so that you're ending up right on the end. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go through both of those. And I flipped my work because, like I said, it's more comfortable for me when the thread is coming up out of the next beads that I'm working with. Okay, so this is what you should have so far. And you're ready to add your next couple of 6mm bicones. So I'll do that one with you, and then I'll let you continue on the pattern. Put on one seed bead, one bicone, 6mm, three seed beads, another bicone, and one more seed bead. Okay. So I pulled those down. I'm going to just turn this and get the end of my monofilament. And then we want to come up through this 4mm bead, so the opposite direction of the bead that we're coming out of. Hold it and give it a nice pull. You can really pull this monofilament pretty good since it's so strong. And then go through that seed bead right next to the 4mm bead you're coming out of, and through the next 6mm bicone, and then go through the next 3 seed beads. And again, I'm just going to flip my work over so I can come up through them. Okay. And give it a nice strong pull. So you should have a pattern that looks like this so far, and you're just going to continue this pattern all the way until you get to this last set of bicones. So don't put those on quite yet. When you get to that point, we'll meet back here and we will finish up our bracelet with the main central beads, and then I'll show you how to go around and complete it with the seed beads around the sides. I just want to mention I really am liking how these 4mm Czech fire polish beads are fitting in. I almost like them better than the 4mm crystal bicones. I think they fit really nice, and they just come in so many beautiful finishes. So if you want to use some of those for your bracelet, I think it's definitely a great option. I really, really like how they are looking. And also I just want to mention too that this already is a very nice bracelet. So if you want to end your bracelet here, once you put on the final loops and you're finishing jump ring or split ring, you can do that. I'm going to show you how to finish it the way that I did above with the seed beads on either side. I think it kind of just adds another dimension to it, but it's certainly a beautiful piece just like this, so it's up to you. So I am right here where I have one more set of our pattern to do coming out of our 4mm fire polish bead here. And so I'm going to continue the pattern just like we were. 1 seed bead, 1 6mm bicone, 3 more seed beads, another bicone, and 1 more seed bead. Okay, pulling that down. And just like we've been doing, going back up through that fire polish bead, just the opposite direction. Pull it nice and tight. Go through the seed bead and the bicone. And we're going to actually end this following the exact same pattern. The only difference is we're going to need to add our split ring on if you're using split rings, just like we did in the beginning. Just really recommend adding that on at this point instead of going back later, because you don't want to risk possibly cracking any of your beads when you're trying to get that split ring on. It's just a lot easier to do it at this point. So we are ready to do that. Just going to pull it one more time. You want to really try to pull that nice and tight. And it does. It feels good and snug. Okay, so we're going to string on the last 3 4mm beads and a split ring. And we're going to come up through those seed beads that we just came out of, just go in the opposite direction. Okay, so pull that nice and tight. You see how you're coming out of the top of those 3 seed beads right there. So you're going to continue from that point going back around your bracelet. So you're going to be heading this way, adding seed beads in between the 2 large bicone beads. So we're going to be adding seed beads between this bead and this bead, continuing all the way around. Okay? So from the point where you are coming out of those 3 seed beads, go through the large bicone, and pull. And depending on which beads you're using in this portion and the inside of your bracelet, you're going to need to decide how many beads you want to put between each of the large bicones, because when you're using the crystal beads or you're using fire polish beads or you're changing it up, it may be that you need an extra seed bead more than I did, or maybe one less seed bead. It just all depends, so see what works. Okay, so I decided to go with 8 seed beads in between each of the large bicones because I feel like it's just came out to be the right amount and looks nice without being the loops being too big. Okay, so I'm adding 8 more seed beads and I'm going through the next large 6mm bicone. Okay, so you can see how it's looking. It's adding just a nice finished edging to the bracelet. So we'll do one more. Okay, 8 more seed beads. And continuing to the next large bicone. And go right in through there. And pop it into place. So you get the idea, and we'll continue until we get all the way to this side of the bracelet, and I will meet back up with you at that point and we will finish up. Okay everybody, so you're at the end of one side of your bracelet and we're going to continue on through the other side. And to do that, once you have added your final 8 seed beads on one side and you're coming out your last large bicone bead, just go through the next 3 seed beads to get onto your other side of your bracelet. And it might take you a minute to get through them because there are a couple of, at least one strand of monofilament already in there, depending on if you have already reinforce your bracelet on that side or not. You can see that I still have my tail end. I haven't woven that back in. And you might want to wait to weave that back in also, just like I have, until you're at the very end. That way you don't have to fight with getting this piece of your monofilament to the other side, you know, in order to go back around and do the trim on your bracelet. So that's my suggestion. It can be annoying to have the tail hanging out there, but for this project you might just want to wait. And you can see the bracelet does start to curl up a little bit once you've done one side, but you'll find that when you go back through and do the other side, it'll straighten up a little bit more, just like this one. So you've gone through those 3 seed beads to get to the other side of your bracelet, and then you want to go through the first large bicone. It wants to go through other beads, so we just gotta take our time. Okay, so just go through that large bicone that's right there. And do the same thing you did on this side. So start stringing, if you're doing 8 seed beads like I am, go ahead and add 8 more seed beads to your thread or your line. And I'm just moving this out of the way because it wants to fight with my tail. Alright, so let's add 8 seed beads. Alright, and we're gonna do the same thing we did on the first side. So coming out of that large bicone, and we're going into the next large bicone and coming out the other side. I'm going to string these seed beads down and move this out of my way. And see if that makes it a little easier to get through. And sometimes you have to bend your work in order to make it a little easier to get your monofilament out of the beads that you're trying to go through. Okay, so we have our nice little loop completed on the first link right here. We're coming out of our large bicone, and we're going to continue this same pattern, adding our seed beads from large bicone to large bicone all the way to the end, and I'll see you back there when you get to that point. So I'm just going through this loop on the end, going through each of these beads. And that's just reinforcing that loop. I'm going to try to go through these seed beads if it'll let me. And it did. Might have to try multiple times to get it through when you're working with monofilament and you're going through beads multiple times. Sometimes it takes a little patience and a little persistence. Okay, so we came out of there. So I'm going to make my first little loop, my knot right here, going just through there. I created this loop on the side, and I'm going to pull this line through my loop and make a little knot right there. Now I'm not going to pull too hard. I'm going to pull hard enough but not too hard, because if you stretch it, remember monofilament has a little stretch to it. If you're pulling like this, you're going to stretch your line right here and you're going to have a gap in your beads. So just be thinking about that when you're making your little knots, that you want to pull it tight, but don't pull it to the point where you're stretching it out. And you may have to go through one bead at a time at certain points, and that's okay. Go through this one again. And after you make a knot, you want to continue going through more beads. That way it helps to hide your knot. And like I said before, you may need to bend your beads or your work at certain points in order to make it a little bit easier for you to get your line through. And also, by the way, if you've gotten to this point and you have line that is still like seriously long, you can definitely cut your line a little bit, just long enough so that you're able to finish off your work, but so that you don't have a big old long piece hanging out there that's just more difficult to work with. Why make it more difficult than it needs to be, right? So if you cut off about 5 feet of line for this project, you should be pretty good. I did clip off a few extra inches that I had just to make it that much easier. Okay, so I'm going to make one more little knot right here on this side of the bicone. Pull it tight, but not stretching it. And I'm going to try to go through just a few more beads so that I don't have to cut my line right there. Okay, instead of forcing it, I'm just going to go ahead and leave it at that. I feel really confident in how strong this piece is. I'm going to cut that right there. It's really pretty. I love the color combination. Okay, so let's put on our finishing touches. We're going to put on our toggle clasp. I'm going to just check the length, compare it to this one. Yep, just right. Just right. Okay. So I'm going to take my split ring, I'm going to find the end. Okay, and these can take some patience to work with as well. This is how I open my split rings. I'm not sure how other people do it, but I usually take my pair of bent nose pliers and I just grab on to that one side. Split rings are just like a keychain ring or key ring. They're just smaller. You need to go a little further back, like that, and just feed your toggle clasp or your end on, and then I just grab onto it like that and then just roll it down. Okay, there we go. And we'll do the same thing to get our other end on. If I had larger split rings, I would have used those on these ends just so that it would easily go over these 4mm beads. And I'll probably order some and do that. But for the purposes of showing you on the video, this is fine. Okay. So we got that at a point where we'll be able to split that, and it's on my nail at the moment. Okay. This is a toggle clasp that came in this month's, the April 2018 bargain bead box. Love that subscription. That was the very first one I received. That was a lot of fun. I can't wait till the next one. Alright. Okay guys, so we're finished with our bracelet. I'm really happy with it. I'm just playing with these little ends here. They kind of move around just a little bit, but kind of train them into place. It looks really nice. Let's see if I can put it on for you guys. There we go. Isn't that nice? I love this bracelet. Really happy with it. So I hope you guys are happy with yours too. I'd love to know what you think about it in the comments. Let me know if you've made one or made something with this tutorial that's similar. Feel free to post any pictures of anything you've made from my tutorials on my Facebook page at Orchid and Opal Jewelry and Beads. I'd love to see it. And I appreciate you guys being with me while I make this bracelet. Hope you learned a little something. Hope you have a nice bracelet there ready to wear. And I'll see you on my next video. Bye guys. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. I would also love for you to follow me on Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook, and Etsy. Orchid and Opal Jewelry. Thanks for watching.